Hey guys, welcome back to MFO. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. I talked a couple of days ago about the fact that I was going to bring out some old school baits and see whether people are still using them. But these old school baits are springtime baits. And because it is getting into the beginning of April, I want to talk about springtime baits, but I want to bring out some of these old school baits and see if people are still using them. Now, I am really going back here. So, we're going to be talking about not just floating worms, but the pre-rigged worm, the old icon worms, pre-rigged worms. We'll see if you guys use these still, and I'll give you some tips, and we'll put them in the pool and show you how they work when we come back. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. We're talking about pre-rigged worms. I tell you what, back in the day, this had to be like 20 or more years ago. I was sponsored by Icon Worms. We used to do outdoor shows where we would let the kids use these Icon worms, because I think that's what pre-rigged worms were pretty much known for. They were like kids' baits. They were so easy to use that even kids could use them, and kids could catch bass with them. And to a point, I wonder if pre-rigged worms actually didn't get used by a lot of guys because we don't want to be seen as using a kids type worm. But I tell you what, they catch fish. I keep holding up this pink or bubblegum colored pre-rigged worm, but you talk about guys who in the springtime are throwing floating worms, and what do? You even hear, when you rig your floating worm, put a little kink in it to get some, erratic action. Well, look at the kink in that pre-rigged worm that comes this way, right? And when this pre-rigged worm swims, it kind of spirals as you're moving it because of the kinks and bends in it. It's perfect for anywhere that you're throwing a floating worm, whether you're fishing for pre-spawn bass that are kind of cruising the banks, whether you're looking at, to be honest, I've thrown pre-rigged worms right in on the beds because that spiraling action gets them, and a lot of times those fish will just bite the back end of the worm. Well, guess what? The back end of the worm has a hook in it. You can see that right there. So just a fish kind of biting that back end of the worm to move that worm off of its bed, and you've got that fish hooked. So there's a lot of positives to a pre-rigged worm. Couple of things in terms of how I rig these and how I fish them. A pre-rigged worm is a worm that I am going to use a barrelhead with a barrelhead swivel with a snap on it, because that's the way the pre-rigged worm comes, with a loop, and so you have to have some way of attaching that. This will allow that twisting action of the worm not to twist up your line so bad. The worm is going to twist. It's designed to twist. You have to have something to reduce the twist. Otherwise, your line is just going to get severely twisted in no time flat, because that's what you're doing. You're intentionally having that worm twist on the retrieve all the way back. But where do you fish it? Shallow water, over grass, near docks, over beds, anywhere that fish might be guarding fry, things like that. Now, this bubble gum in the spring, it's pretty deadly. But I tell you what, you get some other colors, whether it's a natural worm color or things like that, June bug, those colors work phenomenally as well. And you can, at times, decide that you want to just put a little split shot weight right up here, and that'll bring your worm down in depth. Otherwise, this bait is going to ride, a foot or so off the surface of the water. But if you want to bring it down a little bit, just put a split shot right above your barrel swivel, and that'll bring the bait down and won't affect the action of that pre-rigged worm. Now, one of the things that I've talked about in the past, and I'm going to relate this to throwing a jerkbait. With my pre-rigged worm, I set my drag very, very light on my reel. And it's just like I do on a jerkbait. When I do get a fish that bites this bait, just like on a jerkbait, if that fish bites the tail, I want that fish to be able to swim away from me. I don't want to be pulling the fish from here like this and keep all those other hooks in front of the fish. I want that fish to be able to grab that bait, turn, and swim away from me wow, we're getting a thunderstorm here. It's pouring rain all of a sudden on my tin roof down here in the barn, bait shop. All right, so we're gonna just talk a little louder and keep going. So I want that fish to pull away from me, and I want these other two hooks to go ahead and hook the fish as well as the fish is pulling away from me. So my drag will be set light on my spinning reel, let that fish kind of pull, let me get a couple other hooks in the fish as well before I bring that fish to the boat. So those are the ways that I fish this. You can see in some of this video that we've done how this bait looks in the water. It's a killer bait. And my big question to you guys is, do you guys still throw a pre-rigged worm? Have you ever thrown a pre-rigged worm? Icon was a big maker of these in the past. The Worm was another one. There's been some other manufacturers who've made them. I'm curious as to your thoughts, guys. Have you thrown them, or am I going to see in the comments, yeah, Mark, we let our grandkids throw these baits all the time, but we don't ever throw them anymore. Curious as to what your thoughts are, guys. Send me your comments. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button and become a member of the Mark Fisher Outdoors community. We'd appreciate that. We will see you again tomorrow for another episode of Mark Fisher Outdoors. Take care, everybody. Boy, it's storming out there. Dang.